Hello everyone, it's me the Boss Hog and we're back with another video. Not only is this another midweek video, but we're also going to be doing something which I think is more or less unprecedented. We're going to be deep diving into my October income and costs. It's going to be a full breakdown and I'm just going to walk you through it as a man, part of a married couple in my mid-30s, living in London and with a young child. Let's do it. Alright, so as a starting point, this is our high-level summary. Don't worry, we will absolutely be going into each one of these categories separately. I also just want to kind of put a bit of a health warning, for want of better words. I'm basically doing this to keep myself honest. That's the whole purpose of this channel, really, to sort of give myself accountability, and as a secondary objective, to be transparent. I'm not doing this to sort of either brag or to feel sorry for myself or etc. This is just my personal journey. If you enjoy watching someone go on their journey, want to be a part of it, then that's great. But really, this is sort of my experiences, I suppose, and that's personal to me. So all these figures, they include also two people. It's not just me. I'm speaking as the sort of financial manager, I guess, of my household. So the income costs here are sort of everything that we have as a family. I did actually originally plan to do this in September, and then I was like, do you know what? Like, there's a lot of one-off costs in September. I'll just leave it until October. And then October also had a bunch of one-off income and costs as well. So part of me started to wonder when I was doing this whether I just regularly have one-off costs, and by the time I actually think about it, I may as well just view these as sort of regular. So again, I haven't really gone into this level of detail ever before, so this is a bit of a learning exercise for me as well. And I thought, well, sooner or later I've got to start this, so it's going to be October that we're going to start. And yeah, it's basically very interesting. Like, I would say the costs are especially unusual, but several of them actually had a direct impact on the income as well, primarily around things like business travel, as in for work, as well as sort of casino sessions as well, which have been pretty good to me over the last couple of months. So that's had an impact into these numbers. So that's our high level summary. So income 12.5k, our regular costs, so those are the things that I can sort of predict in advance, very regular, etc. 5.5, and then we have costs other. Again, this was much higher than I was expecting. It'll be interesting to see if this sort of continues. And then investments here, so this is sort of our leftover in a way, and as we'll get to later in the deck, this is actually a pretty good month in terms of those investments. And again, this doesn't include our investments in things like our private pension, which come out before our income is actually paid to us, right? For anyone who's in the UK and has a private pension. So it won't include those kind of things in this. This is everything that reaches our bank account and then leaves our bank account as well. So that's the reason for that. And that's why, by the way, it's a pretty good number in my opinion. So that's the summary. We're just going to walk through each one of these categories now. If that's if that's the reason that everyone came for, that's fine. You could just finish watching the video now. But I'm going to go through each one of these areas next, and then we're also going to try and predict November as well. And then, you know, in a month's time, we'll see how good or bad our forecasting was. All right, so in terms of income, again, just to be super clear, so these are wages after deductions for income tax, national insurance, and pension contributions. You can probably do a proxy in terms of where we are. I think especially for my wife, I'm not going to give like her exact number, as in that she earns, right? We both have things like pension contributions, etc. But obviously these are good wages, even by London standards. When I sort of look at the ONS, this puts sort of myself in about the top 2% of earners and my wife in sort of the top 5% of earners. So definitely we are above median by any measure. And even an expensive city like London, these are good numbers for sure. Also as well, the Liam Casino here, which is primarily poker, but actually I have been playing a bit of blackjack as well. I've been running really well. Actually, the September figure was even more extreme because I had my second best ever win in poker. That was like 2.7k in a single night, so pretty amazing. This is sort of 2 sessions, 1.7k in poker, and then £500 in blackjack. So again, to be clear, this is the income from those sessions. There was costs as well. Both of those were very profitable sessions, especially the poker as well. So this is purely looking at the income, but that's a big number that will make a significant contribution. So yeah, definitely running above. 1.7k is about my 5th largest win since I started measuring sort of casino visits. So again, very atypical. I've got like 130 sessions in total, so you're looking at sort of the top a few percentage of sessions. So definitely atypical compared to what we would typically see. Consults here is an interesting one. I've spoken about it before in terms of side hustles. They're not particularly frequent, but when they happen, they're great. So typically it's sort of anywhere between about $175 and $250 typically for a session, and basically it's my professional working expertise. So these are publicly declared at work as well. My employer's fine with me doing these as long as I obviously don't talk about specific things in my company. This particular consult was basically a strategy commercial interview for sort of my thoughts on the mobile virtual network operating market, so the mobile market basically, both in terms of the MNO, so the people who own the network, as well as sort of the resellers of those services in the UK, what the different financial approaches were in terms of the commercials, etc. So this is something I've been doing for like well over a decade. And know quite well, so that was an interesting session for sure. So good fun there, and yeah, that worked out as £165.5. So really happy with that. Banking income, I mean, this is very small. It's effectively just some sort of cashback and interest in our current account. It's pennies in the scheme of things, but seeing as I was measuring everything, that I thought I would. And other here, this is also quite unusual. And is three things basically. So I have an agreement with my sister that she will resell some of the stuff we no longer need, and she gets 50%, I get 50%. So I didn't necessarily need this. I told her she could keep it for longer, and to use her words, it was a case of, well, if it sits in my bank account, I'm likely to spend it, so I should give it to you because basically I owe you it. So that's an agreement. I think both of us feel like we get a good deal out of this arrangement. It's not the first time I've done it. She gets the £112.50 her end as well for the work that she does, and I get the money and don't have to think about the admin or anything like that. So for me, it's a win as well. So I'm happy with that. Then I had this £21 give or take from an old bank account. So basically I had a credit card with Halifax that I paid off honestly about 5 years ago, but I evidently overpaid by this amount. So it sat as a credit on my account during that time, and I finally got around to sort of closing the Halifax account, getting a check from them for this amount, and then cashing it. So that was income from that. And then there's this 54.72 here. So I've spoken about it before, but one of my responsibilities at work is payments, and my employer is in the process of setting up new payment infrastructure that obviously I'm involved in. So I was using my personal account for doing some testing. They'd taken money from my account, and so this is basically, testing has been complete. And so they refunded me that money, which is what I'd expect. But it's technically income, right? The costs have come out over the last couple of months, and now the income has come back in October. So again, that won't be happening too often, but that's our breakdown. So broadly speaking here, I mean, the way that I think about it is if you add the 5.5 and the 4.5, you get 10. And that's the kind of number that I have in my mind in terms of income, like after taxes and all the deductions. We basically have 120 grand a year. Obviously by month, that's 10 grand a month. So it's quite a round number. It's very close to being the exact number, and that's basically our more regular income. I do fairly frequently visit casinos, but I have definitely been running good recently, and I am a profitable poker player in the long run. Obviously no one's a profitable blackjack player in the long run, with exceptions. But I know all the odds. I play sort of perfect blackjack to the rules, etc. And so I can eke out a fairly small starting position into many hours, all things being equal. And you will win some sessions and lose some sessions against the house, right? It's just the nature of these kind of things. I really enjoy it, so that's partly fun for me as well. And if I win money, that's just a bonus. So all of our income for October. Without further ado, let's have a look at our regular costs. All right, so about a month ago, I did a similar video where I was looking at some of these costs. So I don't want to dwell on too many things like the mortgage, right? I've spoken about that before. I slightly overpay on this, but I'm more than happy to do so by about £300. But this figure now is quite regular, so we're going to leave it there. In terms of new things that I think are worth talking about here, the shopping is less than I was expecting, which in theory is good until you realise that a lot of the saving was basically spent eating out. One of the reasons why September and to some degree October was a bit unusual for us is our daughter started a new school, and it was a bit of a rough start, to be honest with you. It's her first big girl school, and it was quite difficult for her. So we were sort of constantly camping out near the school just in case sort of we needed to be quite quick to go and pick her up, etc. And I think my wife and I were both extremely busy at work as well, so we were just a bit lazy in terms of the food prep, etc. So this like £408 here, that's much less than I was expecting. Like a few months ago we were at 800, we've got it down to about 600. In theory, to get it down to 400 would be great. but we're just not there yet, basically. And this is regular shopping, so it does include things like, I don't know, toilet paper, cleaning stuff, I don't know, tin foil, everything like that in the house, right? But it wouldn't include things like clothes or other sort of eating out or etc. So it's kind of our regular local supermarket shop, and what we do in there. So that's, I guess, in theory good, but again, it's kind of offset later on. This was quite surprising for me because, again, for anyone who's seen that video a month ago, the service charges at the time were in at like 700 and something. So our service charges went up like 25% year on year, which was pretty disgusting. We do get a breakdown, etc., but a lot of the tenants were kind of up in arms. We'll see how this shakes out. I am watching sort of the UK regulation with interest about things like service charges. I actually don't have a problem with service charges, right? Somebody needs to maintain the lift, to trim the garden, to hoover the communal hallways. I think there is a legitimacy in the charge. It's just the amount is really extreme, right? £330 a month for a sort of 2-bed flat is expensive. And again, this is just for the communal area in theory, right? I own my flat. Even if I don't own the ground that it sits on. And again, this isn't ground rent, which is a different thing, and in this month in particular wasn't expected, and I have no cost for it. So yeah, this is just basically for the maintenance of the communal areas in my building, which is expensive. So that, I think, will be our new figure for the next year at least. The mobile contract, which a few people sort of suggested I need to have a word with my wife, it does also include the hardware, which is still being paid off, as in the physical mobile phone. It was also a bit higher this month because my wife was roaming in Poland, where she was out for a couple of weeks. So fine, it was a bit bigger than expected. Banking fees are also quite high, £30 basically. However, a lot of this is linked to FX fees. Both my wife and I were traveling, her in Poland and myself in Moldova. And we were sort of getting 3% on our costs. So I guess, to be fair, I mean, an interesting thing from this is maybe we should shop around a little bit to see, if there's a credit card that maybe is a few quid a month, but doesn't have the FX charges, right? If that's worth doing, if we're going to be doing that more regularly, or if this is just, again, an unusual month. So something for us to keep an eye on and consider. The professional cleaner here is also an interesting one as well. So my wife really likes this. It's sort of an occasional thing that we do. And it wouldn't usually be this expensive, but we had her in for like 7 hours. And the thinking here was like, my wife was already away. It was just me and I was going away. So we kind of did a deep clean because we were both coming back on the weekend and we didn't really want to have to do anything when we got here. So basically everything in our flat got properly cleaned across the day. And it is quite nice. I wouldn't want to do it too often, but actually, 15 quid an hour for a professional cleaning service in London doesn't feel too unreasonable. To be honest with you, I do expect this to be like a monthly cost, but not to that degree. Probably more like 4 to 6 hours rather than 7. But again, it's a nice to have. Noom is a sort of norm, however I'm meant to pronounce this. This is my wife's like dieting meal plan. She has gone on similar before. I'm not sure if it's specifically with this company, and she did really enjoy it. I think we've both been so busy and eating out. It's sort of one of those things that my wife wanted to do. So my wife contributes very materially, as we've just discussed. But it was one of those subscription charges I didn't realize was there. This does cover 6 months, so this isn't every month. This is sort of, to sort of track progress and stuff rather than meal plans, etc. But again, rather than the physical ingredients within meal plans, it is meal plans. So we'll see if this benefits my wife. And ultimately, if my wife is happy, then I tend to, get a better life experience from it, basically. So it could be a really good investment. We shall see. The rest here is sort of fairly normal, and again, I've spoken about it before, maybe with the exception of Thames Water, which again also went up sort of quite a lot, like 20% year on year. So definitely the inflation is feeding through, and other things in here. Oh, it might be worth talking about the middle section here. We don't have any costs for either interest to in-laws, but we're basically sitting on some cash for our in-laws where we will be paying them interest because the money is stored against our offset mortgage. So we're basically sort of paying them instead of the bank, but that hasn't started yet. And in the HMR repay here, this is basically something where me and my wife both got tax bills, and we're sort of looking at ways we can repay it. Not massive, they're like mid 4 figures, but actually not exactly small either. Both of us have got queries with them at the moment, but we may well choose to repay it in one go, or we may try and spread it out over 12 months, depending on what the final number ends up at. But for now, this is just 0 for that reason. And the other zero here, the sort of service charges H&E, so heating and energy. That's zero this month, even though I would have expected it to have arrived. Basically, it's just late. I think our management company is a bit rubbish and they're sort of struggling with the complexity of billing, which is kind of funny because that's what I do for a living. And we just haven't got it yet. So I am expecting this cost to catch up, and I'm expecting about £700 for the quarter. But we will see. So these are our regular costs again, because it's looking at a single month rather than our sort of overall cost. There'll be some months where we don't get charges. So the sort of 3, 6, well, actually it's more like 4, 7, 10, and 1. We have our quarterly charges. So yeah, again, October tends to be quite an expensive month for us, but because the heating and energy didn't come through, that's still pending at the moment. So these are our regular costs anyway. Again, we'll keep an eye on this for November. Now let's have a look at the good stuff, which is the non-regular costs. All right, so in terms of non-regular costs, again, a pretty unusual month, I suppose. We'll start with the work travel for myself. So I traveled to Moldova. I've got a team offshore there, maybe a fairly unusual place to have an offshore team. It's my second visit. Both times it's cost me more or less 1,000. However, the costs here were only 675, and that's mainly because the plane ticket specifically of it, so the £300 plane ticket, the cost of that was in September, so before this period, but my income will likely be in November, and we'll basically wrap everything up. So my claim is 957.20 there. And yeah, I'm expecting that to come into November as one of my one-off income that we touched on not so long ago now. Next up, we've got family holidays. So the way this worked is that my wife and daughter spent 2 weeks in Poland. Wife's Polish, and obviously my in-laws were out there, so they went and spent a couple of weeks. One of those weeks I had by myself as a bachelor, and then the other week I was in Moldova, so I actually didn't go for this time, but that was half term. And then what I did is I just grouped all of the costs associated with that trip into that line. So that includes things like trains, buses. We regularly help out with like food shopping and stuff while we're out there, just to sort of help out Eva's parents. So group that all together. Honestly, that was a bit more than I was expecting. I did budget 500 for it, or sort of mentally budget 500 for it. But honestly, I thought that figure would be quite generous. But actually, by the time my wife had sort of done doctor's visits, shopping trips, and everything else, it was 558. So I guess in fairness, more or less in line with what I was expecting. But also I thought my expectations were that I'd actually built in a little bit more buffer than that. Eating out I've already spoken about, and again, this isn't like fancy dinners or anything like that. This is largely like coffee, snacks, etc. So yeah, this was quite surprising. I put 200 into my budget for this. So again, in fairness, right, this is £200 more than I would have expected, whereas my shopping was £200 less than I would have expected. So overall, I sort of think that it's more or less a wash, and it's more or less evening out. But it will be interesting to see if we can reduce this in the medium term. Saying that, however, I've got like a date night or date lunch with my wife in a couple of weeks, so I'm sure we'll do some damage there. But at least that will be sort of a proper night out or eating out, rather than sort of coffees and sandwiches, etc. Adapted Minds. This is like a subscription I got for my daughter. I think it was originally over Christmas. Again, when we were in Poland, just as something for her to do. It's like a maths and English game with like animated monsters and stuff. It's a cool service. It's just I've been trying to cancel this with my bank for like 4 months, and each time I'm sort of struggling. I've got a number of issues at the moment with Santander, my current account provider. I'm quite tempted to sort of write a snooty letter and just kind of consolidate everything, because it's pretty painful. So I may well do that, but hopefully anyway we'll get this sorted. I think I'm owed like 5 months at this stage in terms of sort of since I cancelled it or tried to cancel it, and so far we haven't gotten anywhere. So hopefully there'll be again, maybe that'll be one of our other incomes in November or December. Who knows? Also, presents was much higher than expected as well. So honestly, I was shocked at this number, to be honest with you. However, there were a few things in October. So my brother-in-law had his 40th, so I travelled down there, and again, I did group everything into that. So sort of the visit, the presents, I sort of got them a sort of paid sushi and drinks experience for my brother-in-law and my sister. Then we've also started to get some Christmas presents. We're not really big planners for Christmas, but we just kept finding good presents. So I mean, the best one is, it's like a 4-foot tall, soft koala cuddly toy that I think my daughter's going to absolutely love. It just about fits into our large suitcase. So we managed to hide it away. But there's a few other presents as well, like calendars, some pictures of space and stuff. And again, my daughter loves all that stuff. Then we also had a family friend visit. Their son turned 3, so we went down to visit them and did some presents, etc. And then I've called some gifts to bribe daughter at school. So this was things like, if you can behave all week, then you get a special bonus at the weekend. So these are things like Smurf toys she's really into at the moment, or arts and crafts, etc. So etc. I also got myself quite an expensive book, a £30 book. I guess depends how you view that, but a nice book for me to read. And likewise, my wife also got a new book as well. So it all just added up. I think sometimes, especially with the non-regular costs, it's the things that's like I would have never appreciated that this was £2,500 across the month. But I guess it is what it is. And then, although I guess the rest kind of seems self-explanatory, just to be clear, so the sort of 1.7 and then £500 for my 2 casino visits. My cost associated with that was 491, so obviously you can more or less do here 2.2 minus 500, so my profit is 1700. Again, very good sessions. And grooming and clothes, so I had like a £30 cut and shave, and then the rest is just clothes basically, so starting to get ready for winter. And again, almost all of that is actually our daughter's clothes rather than anything for my wife and me. Typically when my wife and I spend, especially my wife, it tends to be like big hits, it'll be like updates to wardrobes, or maybe change of jobs where you want to do something very similar. So I expect most of this is going to be sort of regular stuff for, again, hairdressers occasionally, or barbers for me, and then clothes. But again, we'll see how this sort of translates over time. So it is what it is. So now we're just going to wrap up with our investments as well. All right, so yeah, in terms of investments, so not including private pensions, as I've already touched on, very happy with this, honestly. My original plan was to add 1.7k into ISAs, but did 2.5, so an extra £800. And similar with premium bonds, which is grouped as like non-ISA investments. Originally planned to do 500, but instead did 1,000. So again, if you think about those two as extras, it's sort of 800 plus 500. So there's our 1.3. And then in poker, we had our 1.7k win. So everything else sort of was more or less paying for itself, right? In terms of money moving around. So pretty good there. The one bad thing here is I had a DD established, or standing order, to pay £100 each month into my daughter's junior ISA, and that's been going on since she was born, more or less. But I didn't do it last month, and that was because I am in the process of moving accounts between brokers, but it's been a very long process. I guess I cancelled the payment because I didn't want it to get stuck in my old broker when everything else had gone, but obviously that was way too ambitious and I should have just left it there. So I will do a catch up for this, but for now we didn't contribute anything, but it's okay because again she's not going to get it for another 14 years or so we should have time to catch up our £100. So that's everything for October, basically our income, our regular costs, our non-regular costs, and then investments. I do choose to separate out investments. I know I could put them in one of the other 2 categories, but they feel different. This is basically us planning for the future. Also as well, the way that my wife and I kind of see it is that we sort of are almost at the stage where one of our wages can cover our costs and the other person's wages could cover the investments. So that's more or less how we see it, especially because we do have like insurance products and things like that, both with our work, but also our private, where if one of us dies or is incapacitated, we basically get a sum of money that pays off the mortgage. So that would be a significant thing. So again, it kind of makes sense to segment it in this way, just to make sure that we have sort of enough contingencies in place that, even if we had to sacrifice the investments, between the insurances that would come in as well as then our own income, we would be able to sort of manage and not get kicked out and everything else. So that's the thinking here. So we're going to be doing this for the next few months, and then what I'd like to try and do is sort of do a forecast for the next year. But again, I think I need a bit more data before I can reliably do that. It's all, again, quite new to me at the moment. However, we are going to have a go with November, so let's do that now. All right, so here it is. I'm a bit apprehensive, but I think it's important to try and understand and get good at our crystal balling. There are some regular costs here that are basically going to be catching up. So there's a bit of an increase here. So the £700 for the heating and energy needs to catch up, and as well as an extra £100 into the investments there as well. There's also generally an expected busy month for ISA. I don't quite want to call it a catch up. Like, we're on track to complete my wife's ISA by the end of the tax year. Mine is already complete, so that's great. but it is just expected to be a busier month just because of the way the weeks fall, etc. And then the other differences here, so income is 11k, and the difference between the 10 for the wages and 11 is the £1,000 for my business travel, right? Business expenses should be paid in November, so that's the difference there. The cost regular is normal. The cost other here is obviously significantly lower, so it'll be interesting to see whether I'm just way off on that. And there's a lot of stuff that, again, I'm just not finding difficult to forecast at the moment. That's definitely possible, and I think that's going to be the biggest difference. And the investments here, there's an ability for us to sort of do less or potentially even more, depending on what happens elsewhere. And we'll see as and when we can. I don't really expect to have any trips to the casino in November. I just don't think I'm going to have time. There's too much going on at work and my wife's work, as well as sort of my responsibilities as a husband and father. So that should also sort of reduce the costs at other, which, you know, that could be quite chunky as well as the income if we continue to run well, but we shall see. All things being equal and assuming that my forecasting is correct, that should again leave us with a surplus of about 1,000, but we'll see how that goes on. And then we'll do similar, we'll basically do a comparison when we do this in a month's time to see how wrong I was and why I was wrong as well. So they'll be slightly different next month. Anyway, hopefully that's been interesting to everyone. If there are any questions, etc., let me know. Likewise, if people are interested in the sort of cash flow statement and forecasting that I've built in Google Docs for this, then I'm happy to sort of talk through that. It's nothing, it's definitely not rocket science, it's fairly basic, but again, it's basic once you know it, right? If you don't, then it might look magic, but it's not. So this should all sort of populate. The way that I do this, by the way, is like I just download bank statements, then put it into the Excel that supports, or Google Docs that supports the summary. And then, you know, once I aggregate it into the type of charges that it is, it then just does the stuff. So again, for anyone who's sort of used to summarizing data, it's again, nothing revolutionary. It just does the job. But again, if that's sounds cool and people are interested in that method, then we can do a video on that as well. Otherwise, normal stuff, guys. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I've been the Boss Hog, and good luck with everything. Bye for now.